The more we get hurt, the more a protection mechanism, we start disconnecting from ourselves. How hard it is, how it hits men differently being on this planet, because it's not like they're living fully connected. Why am I in so much in my ego identity? Why am I so feeling so isolated and stuck in myself? Why am I caught in this loop? Sitting here in the US, oh my gosh, the richness of the women and the men from that culture, right? Yeah. There was such a richness to them. They were warm, they were sweet, they were embracing, they were loving.
Thank you so much, Ruchika, for taking the time to sit down with me and have this super important conversation that I feel so deeply about. But I would love to start with our signature question, which is, what does the word bloom mean to you in your personal and professional life?
Yeah, I'm so delighted to be here with you today, actually. I really am delighted. By the time I was in my mid to late 20s, I was really in a lot of pain. I was very lost. I was in deep anguish in my life. I just didn't know what I was doing. My health was not good. My career, I don't know what was happening. Family, relationships. I was just very alone at that time. On the outside, that's not what it looked like. But on the inside, I was still lost. I was like, something's not clicking. I think I may have had an idea of, if I seek, I'm going to become something. I don't even know if I defined it, but I wasn't there. I wasn't getting there. And so that was my initial motivation. I wanted to get away. I wanted relief from the anguish. I wanted relief from lostness and pain. And then at some point, I started to notice that my motivation was, I want to be lovable again. I was remembering, I was in love when I was in my first relationship, 17 to 19 years old, somewhere in that time. I was in love. I had the experience of myself, I was blooming, I would say, in that time, in that age time. I had fallen in love, and it was just like I was so much sweetness myself that my ego, maybe I didn't know how to manage being in love. I didn't. I messed up in all kinds of ways, I'll be honest. But also my soul was showing up in that relationship. It was a soul relationship, soul love relationship. And so my soul was showing up, and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to be that girl again. She was lovable. She was loving and lovable, and I wanted to be that. And on the one hand, from my ego's perspective, I'm like, oh, that's so sad. But what I didn't realize was it was pointing me to something authentic. It was pointing me to the nature of my soul. I want to go back, not to become Buddha or Mother Mary or any of the high beings that I've met or gone on retreat with. I didn't want to, it's not them that I want to become. Blooming to me is becoming totally and completely myself.
In your opinion, what will our viewers take away from this conversation today, and how this will change their life?
This resonates. Maybe a remembering of the richness of who you truly are. We may not know the path to it completely from this talk that we're doing today, but the remembrance, the guidance that, oh, I'm not here to become something that's not me. And I'm not here also to become my ego, but I am here to discover, to uncover, to really connect with the preciousness, the beauty of who I am. And that is one takeaway that, the listeners here have. I think that would be really big, because we get lost a lot of times on our journeys. We look everywhere except here.
Yeah, that is exactly what we are trying to, figure out here and inspire people to think about it, right? You want to be your authentic self, this person, who you are, and connect with your deeper self and not try to become someone because they inspire you or their lifestyle inspires you, the things they have materially achieved or otherwise in their life. As you said, you're not trying to become Buddha or you're not trying to become Mother Mary. You are trying to bloom into Ruchika. And I'm on my journey of myself, in the same way. So I completely resonate with that. So, Ruchika, I would ask, what is the real self to you? What is your definition of our real self, authentic self?
Yeah. Ooh, that's a complicated question. You know. Um, I feel like part of it is our soul, who we are. I don't know if I have a definition of it. Sometimes people call this a higher self or our spirit. Sometimes people, I think it also depends on ideologies. Sometimes people say this is the part that evolves as we go through lifetimes. Also, who we actually are is our presence. And then, of course, we are on this planet in our bodies. So everything that comes between those two, between who our beings, our soul, and everything that we embody, like they do in Middle Eastern and South Asian cultures. So one of the things that happened is because I had gotten so hurt. I had been so hurt in my life, and I don't think there's any being, any person on this planet who hasn't gotten hurt.
Yeah.
I think some of us have gotten more hurt, some of us have gotten less hurt, but it's inherent that we are all hurt. It's not easy to be on this planet. It's very hard. And what I had gotten in the process of my own hurts is that I had lost connection and contact with myself, with my nature, on so many different levels. The more we get hurt, the more we a protection mechanism, we start disconnecting from ourselves. I know you and I connected a couple days ago, and you were from Pakistan. And and one of the things I was really struck by is that I mentioned to you just for a few moments, oh my gosh, the richness of the women and the men from that culture, right? There was such a richness to them. They were warm, they were sweet, they were embracing, they were loving. They couldn't dissociate from who they were underneath it all and become their egos. Because their generosity, their sweetness, their capacity to embrace us with their words, really embrace us with their words, the ego is not capable of that. It's so amazing that despite, and this is both for Middle Eastern and South Asian cultures, this is the similarity in the cultures. I think different kind of areas may have different qualities, but in Middle Eastern and South Asian cultures, it's this deep warmth and capacity to have sweetness. So in their lifetimes, they didn't disconnect as much as we are over time. They're disconnecting from our true selves, from our nature. They somehow stayed connected. Part of it was necessity. If they went into the egos would have broken down. They would have had all kinds of mental health issues.
Yes.
They would have really, and I think what kept them going is that they didn't disconnect that far, because egos do not have the capacity to manage all the wounds and hurts and pains that we experience in our lives. They just don't have it. And they still have it, in the culture. they still have it. They still have the capacity to connect. And the other thing is, like I noticed it was just under the surface for you, waiting to be called out. This is Ansa. You have this in you, right?
True, true.
You have so much access to it. I think because you grew up in a place where everybody was kind of mirroring it to each other. If you were to be like in your ego,
Yes.
and like disconnected, dissociated, isolated, the culture would just pull you back. They would be like, "What's wrong with you, Ansa?"
Absolutely.
They would pull you back into
Yes.
your being, into your self. They would notice something's off, and they wouldn't let you live there as much as they can.
Absolutely.
Does this resonate for you?
Oh my God, 1000%, Ruchika.
Wow. Yeah. So coming to the US, right? We come to the US, it's like it's harder because we don't have that. The US is I think because something where the spirit has gotten really covered over in the US. I think part of it is there's been a lot of fear kind of thing. They're coming to get us kind of thing in the US. So what happens is that when we get really, really terrified, we go to protect ourselves, and we go hide a spirit.
Yes.
That's the only thing that we think we, not consciously, that's the only thing we can try to protect. We hide a spirit. So what happens when you move to a place like US? It's very hard because we can have contact with people, but unlike you, spirit is right under the surface. It's not there. So our spirit doesn't get an opportunity to get contact, or if we're off, off in our own kind of egoic place, there's nothing to kind of bring us back.
Right.
Is this hitting, resonating? Do you have doubts, questions? Please, I just want to welcome.
Yeah, no, definitely. I do. And I resonated on so many levels, where you said that it's hard to be on this planet. Definitely, that's the truth, right? And my understanding is we came knowing all the challenges. We were the brave souls who took on the challenge to come on this planet and go through all these experiences and challenges and still keep intact that soul, right? That richness that we always wanted to bring to the surface and connect with other souls who are on the similar level, on the same level with us. So I see it from that perspective, and that always gives me the grounding. Doesn't matter what kind of circumstances I am or what kind of people I am around, and how much fear is being, they're trying to instill that fear into us. Okay, yes, I get caught up in that in the moment, but the moment I take a step back, I'm like, oops, there you go, Ansa, wait, right? Stop there. You know better. You know who you are. They cannot kill your spirit. So that is one thing. While understanding and acknowledging the challenges and the fears was going around us, and still coming back and connecting to your great part, right? That's one thing. The other thing is that when you mention that our elders, when we were growing up around them, they had that connection and that richness, with their own soul. So it doesn't matter how hard their lives were. I remember from my mother, from my grandmother, from my aunties, they had such a challenging life on many, many levels. And they had the patience, and their love was overflowing, in them. I cannot believe when I look in retrospect, at the events, and I'm like, how did you guys even manage? You were so sweet and so loving all the time, while your husbands were, our mamus, uncles, they were so abusive to you guys. I saw that, I witnessed it, right? They didn't have that much love or connection or the companionship for you, but you never let that affect our relationship and how you showed up for us. How did that happen? And same goes for my mother. And I think because we have tasted that yumminess, as you call it, and the richness, every time we feel like disconnected or we feel like overpowered by this fear, we are able to go back because that richness and yumminess and the warmth of love is so delicious. Then I want to go back to that place, and that's when I want to deliver from that space and that place for others around me, right? Whether it's my son, whether it's, you know, other kids of his age, his friends, or my acquaintances, my friends. So this is exactly when we were talking about the other day, I said we should definitely discuss this and give people a taste, especially being, I think we are messengers in the West because we bring something from the East, from our cultures, which is so rich and maybe unknown, and, you know, so stranger to the people over here. We can introduce them to that taste, to that richness, and maybe we try to, you know, replicate it over here. We can start by this conversation, and then maybe more people join the movement and they want to, you know, experience that richness. So I'm just so glad that we are having this conversation.
Yeah. May it be so. May we really, I think part of it is I love the way that you put it is like how to remember this for ourselves because we forget. I think for women and men it showed up differently how they struggled. They were so connected. They had so much capacity. The men also have their own capacity. Like they I mean, I think when we first talked, you said, "Oh my gosh, you met this person," and you were like, "Oh my gosh, he is my uncle." You're surrounded by uncles as well,
Exactly.
Um, men who also embody that in their own way, in their own capacity. I think women and men both embody the richness. They both embody their nature and their soul and the warmth and the giving differently, but they both embody it. And I think they both had their own struggles. Women had their own struggles, partly also collectively, right? It's like it's hard to be a woman on this planet, and it's easier for me to identify how it's hard for me to be a woman on this planet. In some ways, I am less knowledgeable of how hard it is, how it hits men differently being on this planet, because it's not like they're living fully connected and they're not living that way either. But in the culture itself, the men and the women both embody what's this real care. Even the attachments in those cultures is like, you are my child no matter how old you are. You are always going to be my child, and I'm always going to be here for you, and I'm always going to worry about you. And I may mess up all over the place, but this is the truth. You are my child, and I may mess up on how to take care of you, but my job is to take care of you no matter what. The attachment is so strong. It is like the sense of responsibility and care and love that is like, this is mine for the rest of your life. If you are my child, it doesn't matter if you're 60. You are going to be my child no matter what. So there's such a beauty in that. There's such a beauty in that. But they also, they were in touch with their souls, but they also had their wounding. And their wounding showed up as them shutting down, as them getting angry, as them being rejecting or manipulative, or, they still had their stuff, just like we do.
Right. When you talked about the burden, I wanted to say, like, they never thought that their kids or grandkids or even extended family members are burden to them. Doesn't matter how little material resources they had. I never heard any person, I'm going to have only one child or two child or no kids at all because I don't have the resources, because kids for them were not burden.
No,
They are their
they were,
extension, right?
yeah, because the burden, where does the burden come from? It comes from an ego. It
Mm,
comes from our the tightening that we have in our bodies, the tightening of our perineum, which is all worried about survival. That is our ego. They weren't
mm,
there. When we're around other people, right? And other people have their contracted,
mm,
then we become more in touch with our ego rather than who we actually are. And then
right.
when we meet other people and they're contracted, we
Mm.
contract.
Exactly. Mirror neurons, if people want to understand from the scientific point of view, is
Yeah.
mirror neurons.
Yeah, and so we don't even realize
Yeah,
what has hit us. But
exactly.
somehow I'm going, oh my gosh, why am I in so much in my ego identity? Why am I so feeling so isolated and stuck in myself? Why am I caught in this loop? Sitting here in the US. And then I went to India last year and I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening here? I could feel the structure of my body changing. I could feel it shift over there because the collective doesn't have the perineum that's so tight that we can't feel it.
Exactly.
It's a lot more relaxed over there. So it was like, oh, it's it's some of this is mine. I really have to do my own work in terms of being present, noticing what's happening in me, seeing where am I blocking things, where am I blocking myself from flowing. But part of it is also the culture. Really, it's the community around them.
Yes.
They were all mirroring the richness. They were mirroring the yumminess.
This reminds me actually of my visit to Pakistan last year.
Mhm.
And you won't believe this, but I went there, and as I'm around other people, all of a sudden I'm a different person, right? I'm feeling much more than I should be. I'm interacting with complete strangers because I was presenting at this conference for 7 days, and all those people are coming from all over the country. They're academia, there are, politicians, there are law enforcement agencies, and people, they're coming and they're trying to talk to me, and I'm more open. I'm more in my presence, and I want to share and I want to connect and tirelessly, I'm talking to them and engaging with them for 16 hours a day, let's say, and I feel more energized. I'm not like drowsy or drained of my energy. No, it's the opposite. And then I stay there and I go to Lahore, which is my city, and I haven't seen my home in Lahore for, like, at that time, for 8 years. I go back and I'm just looking outside my house, and one of my neighbors, the lady, comes out and she hugs me from behind. Can you imagine, like, the level of love and connection and integration of both? And it really melted just my heart. I'm like, wow, this is my culture, this is who I am, and that is why I'm feeling so different, right? So that's exactly how it is. And we miss that over here, where everybody's just so skeptical of each other. People are saying things, but in your mind you are trying to figure out what they are saying, why they are saying, what is in it for me, as they say very commonly, right? Like, what is in it for me? We are always trying to figure that part out.
Yeah, it's a different thing. They're running on, and back home they're running on spirit.
Yes.
Spirit is like so alive over there, and so yeah, you're not exhausted because it enlivens when we are contacted. We get even more enlivened. You had real contact with people there, real
Exactly.
contact. They're not hiding. They're
Yes.
they're right there. a lot of spiritual teachers say the West is materially rich,
Mm,
but spiritually in poverty. It's because the way that again, not fully understood, but and I don't want to say this. A part of me doesn't want to say this, but it's like, oh, but there's also something. There's a lot of layers of
mm,
covering on top of the spirit here,
yes,
and we get exhausted.
we do.
We're more in interaction with our egos, with other people's egos, and even if
Mm,
we try to connect with their spirit, it's not. It's hard to reach it.
true.
I was struck. It was like I felt like a different person.
Mm,
And I come back to US last year and I was like sick. I could feel my guts were twisting. I didn't have the energy that I had. I can only do my exercise through adrenaline versus over there I was like moving in spirit. It was like, okay,
yes,
this is effortless
absolutely.
in a way.
Same
Yeah.
thing, same thing. And I can give you another example. As I was in Pakistan and I'm connecting with a lot of people over the period of month and a half, because after this conference, I met people, they started, extending invitations. Oh, we have this another seminar or workshop, please come over, migration seminars and all kind of events. And I go and connect with more and more people. And I'm just so full of energy. I want to do so many things. I want to start so many projects. I had my investments and businesses back home. They were still running, and now I want to expand on that instead of closing them down. That was the initial thought that I had when I was going for Pakistan. And now I want to expand and I want to start new partnerships. And even the idea of starting this YouTube channel, you believe it or not, it happened in Pakistan because that's how energized I was and I wanted to do the things that connect me with my soul, right? And the moment I came here, all of a sudden, just as you said, I don't have the energy even to wake up in the morning. All of a sudden, I'm like, the first week or so, I'm thinking it could be jet lag, it could be time zone change or other things. And then almost 6 months go by and everything is still on paper, all the plans are still on paper, and all of a sudden I'm thinking like, what is the use of this? I don't feel like doing it. And the thing about me is I have to feel every single thing that I do in my life. That I think that's why somehow my progress sometimes is slower than I would want it, to be, but I have to feel it. That's exactly how my spiritual journey started, because I was practicing Islam, as a person who has been brought up as a Muslim. I'm doing my prayers, I'm doing my Ramadan fasting, everything. And then one day I asked this question to myself, like, okay, I'm doing all my duties as a Muslim, but I don't feel that, in me. I want to feel my religion. Or I didn't even know at the time, spirituality is a thing, or, the soul and all those depth. Because all I got brought up was with just words. And I heard them so many times, and that now they were just empty words for me. And even though Islam has very strong branch of spirituality, I was never attracted to it or familiar with it. And now all of a sudden I want to feel what it feels like, to communicate with my higher self or God or Allah. And that's how it started, and I'm still the same. I have to feel it. And so many of my guests, as you know, I do a discovery call with them before in confirming the podcast recording with them, because I have to feel their energy. I have to talk to them for 30 minutes at least and understand where they're coming from, what the vibe is, and all of that. So I think I'm all over the place over here because I'm just so excited. But my point was that yes, it is the richness that we grew up with, and now we see it missing in our environment and we want to bring it back. we want other people around us to taste it as well, not just here but also back home, right? Because over there too we are copying west like blindly. We are after making more money, building bigger houses, buying, bigger and luxurious cars and all of that, and we are thinking that, oh, maybe that's where I will find my happiness, that's where I will find my grounding. And we are just, fade moving away from our real richness and the place. So how and what can we do basically? How can we bring that back into our lives, fully embody it, so other people around us can feel it?
Yeah, good question. I'm going to be honest, it's not going to be easy. Not
Mm.
easy necessarily, right? Because of everything that we've talked about so far. So the first thing is to remember,
Mm.
right? When we remember, um, we want to, it's not just, oh yeah, in the head. Because I know when we spoke, and even today, you're not just remembering from your head. I
Mm.
can see that you're being moved internally, right? There's the remembrance from the head, because we even forgot that, oh my gosh, there's so much richness, there's so much warmth, there's so much care, there's so much love, there's so much capacity. It's the remembrance of it is, but also to feel how that feels. Oh my gosh, what kind of feelings does that evoke in me?
Mm.
And then also bringing it into the body. As I remember, do I feel like my body? What is happening in my body? Am I starting to feel warmth flowing through my body? Am I starting to feel like I'm expanding and I'm softening? Because this was an embodied experience. They had the fountain of it, the spirit, their beings, the nature of themselves. The fountain of it comes from the body, like for babies.
Yes.
Rich and yummy. That's the fountain. So it's really good to remember it from all of those aspects, to see if you can remember it from your body.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have in the beginning remembered it.
Okay.
Other things is, I talked about community, having
Mm.
some kind of community that I think in this day and age, I feel like we need to pursue this consciously. As times have changed, it's really good that we have materially evolved in a lot of ways, right? People don't have to be worried so much necessarily about, am I safe in outside sleeping somewhere that is not protected, and is some animal going to come and kill me? So in those ways, it's really beautiful that we've evolved materially, but it also means that we need to have some kind of community in a conscious way of, how do we restore, reconnect, remember this? Because if we don't do it consciously, it's not our fault. It's the culture these days. We're moving really fast. We're very busy. And most of that takes us away. So how do we make room, find a space for us to like really connect with ourselves, to remember and to support each other? I think it would be really good for, and I would love to do this personally too. It would be really good, and I don't have to be the only one, but really good for South Asian, Middle Eastern women to come together. And I say women because that's a journey that I know. I feel like men have their own journey. They really do. They are needing this just as much as women are needing this. They have their own richness to uncover and blossom into. Other things, I think, is cultivating more access to who we really are. So there can be many different paths to it. I think any kind of consciousness practices, whether it's dancing and whirling, or poetry and writing, or meditation, or something like that, because that way we are becoming less lodged in our ego and more in opening up to other aspects of ourselves. We don't want to make this an ego thing.
Yes.
Like, oh yeah, this is the culture that I come from, so this is how I'm going to behave and act,
Right.
when we don't have the actual embodied experience of it.
Absolutely.
Our egos cannot handle it. They just cannot.
Exactly.
Um, on the journey back, we're also going to go through territories, I would say. Territories of our own wounding. They're going to
Mm.
come up. Our hurts, our wounds, they will come up on as we cultivate this. And this is really the specialty of like the integrating psychology and spirituality is like I want to be realistic. You
Yes.
know, we don't just get really high and get our embodiment and like shove away our wounded
Mm.
parts. It doesn't really work
Right.
over the long term. So we will get into territories where we've had our own hurts and our wounds, just like they did, but they didn't know how to,
Mm.
navigate them necessarily. And we don't always know how to navigate them too. So
Right.
we will go through those. So just to also know, as we are, anyone is going
Mm.
back to the coming back to blossoming into
Mm.
Ansa, into who we are, that it's really, we will hit the roadblocks, the places that were devastated, that were in anguish.
Mm.
And sometimes it's hard to, almost all the time, it's really hard for us to go through that by ourselves
Yes.
and not have the guidance, the support of somebody who kind of knows the territory,
True.
who can hold us as we go through that. So
Yes.
it's a lot of different steps, I feel like, but one can take any of them and get started.
Mm. But the recognition to me is the foundational step, right? Once you recognize, you make that promise with yourself that, okay, I'm gonna go on this journey because I cannot tolerate this emptiness in my life, in my soul anymore, right? As they say, and then the path will unfold itself for you, as the Rumi said. um, and how beautifully you have mentioned that it could be anything that works for you. It could be dance, it could be swirling, it could be just chanting some mantras, whatever your permission slip is, basically, right?
Mhm.
So use that. Journaling is another thing that in these days and age, almost everyone knows how to write, and you can just start writing your thoughts and see a pattern and connect with your soul and what feels really real to you. And that's where you start. And I love how you mentioned that we must, as Southeast Asian women and Middle Eastern women, should come together, form a community, a non-judgmental and safe space for us to discuss our journey, our growth, share the roadblocks, and get the guidance and help from those who are a little bit ahead from us on their path, so they can hold hands. And that's exactly how these masters were, right? Like they, in each and every community, there were these masters, right? Spiritual guides who would guide the community, and that's how the whole community would evolve and grow spiritually. And that's how I think the richness of the entire culture comes, because of that one person who were there. They were practicing spirituality, they were connected with so deeply with their souls, and they were projecting it outside, and people were just attracted to them. They would just love them unconditionally. They didn't know what is it that's attracting them towards this person, to this spiritual
Yeah.
leader, guide, but they would, and then they would try to imitate their ways of life, and then the deeper understanding begins. And I think we can start just by doing that. It's so funny that I mentioned, I don't know, I don't want to take pride in this, but as I am becoming more and more conscious of living from my soul or deeper place, I am becoming this person who is so forgiving, to the point that just recently, one of my loved ones, I forgave them, and that person, for continuously 2 days, kept coming back to me and telling me, you are awesome, you are awesome, I couldn't believe you got over this, what I did to you, and how you were able to let it go and so genuinely, because they could feel it, that I don't have even a speck of that anger or, feeling bad about what they did to me, because I understood at the end of the day we are all souls, and some people are little bit like few steps behind us on the understanding of how we should be and how we connect with each other and be there for each other and offer that place of joy and richness and forgiveness for them to see what it feels like really to be that person.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
really beautiful what you said. Yeah, I was just thinking about, I hadn't really mentioned the so much of my journey, my growth didn't happen. Part of it was psychological, but to be around beings who have cultivated, I think part of it is the embodiment.
Mm,
It's like I didn't, I would go, I would get really high in these places, different teachers in a beautiful way.
right.
But now I have this like, oh my gosh, now I can sense and recognize what is it that they're embodying a lot of times. Because I've been studying this for so long. And it's like, oh my gosh, I can sense what they're embodying and how much of a gift that is to sense the embodiment, to get that kind of in Buddhism, they call it an empowerment, to
Mm-hmm.
get an empowerment and transmission of that. And I'm sure you really connected with that also as a child as you were studying Islam.
Right.
There have to be lots of seeds in you of the qualities that have, maybe a lot of them have sprouted, and maybe some of them are even dormant,
Right.
waiting to be sprouted because you got it.
Yes.
You got it at some point, and like that is really, really beautiful. What a gift to
Mm,
receive that, and then to be able to call on that, because psychologically it's a lot of work to do
true.
it in that way. And yeah, what a gift it is. It sounds like a real gift in terms of your forgiveness for somebody else,
Yes.
to recognize, my gosh, they came from their wound
Yeah.
and they're hurting of you.
Your ego momentarily it just flares up and you want to take revenge and do that same bad thing to that person, connect with yourself and come from a place of understanding. You're like, oh no, 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 that's my ego trying to tell me go do this bad thing back to that person. But no, I know better, and that's why I'm going to choose to forgive them. It will
Mm.
do two things. One, it will teach my ego, to be better, and for this other person to really experience this, not just in words that we say all the time, like, oh, I love you, and it doesn't matter what you do, I would still love you the same. This is how exactly it feels like. You experience it. You did something from the place of, your hurt or wound, and this is how I respond because I truly love you and I understand that. And then
Yeah.
they will get the taste and it will become a chain effect. Oh, that's how we create a community that cares about each other, that is less hurt, less isolated, and there for each other,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
may it be so. And whatever lesson that I may have in allowing myself to get deeply hurt with that person, may I also learn how to, what how to protect myself better
Mm,
in a real way.
yes.
Not in the ego way, but in a real way. How can I have my strength show up in for myself and recognize when somebody else is off?
Mm,
It's such a I think the spiritual journey is so incredible because um I'm not saying that you're doing this, but I know in the beginning I was like, I just really want to be loving, I want to be really big, I want to be really kind. And it was like, yeah, I can be this bigger person, but also I think that the trick is, how do I not leave the parts of myself that I'm not protecting?
Mm,
How do I not leave those ones behind so I can, and it's really a work in progress.
yes.
Really work it. This is such a beautiful journey, and it takes a lifetimes, I feel
Yes.
like, to be on it. How do I learn how to be like, okay, this is a learning experience for me, and I am not going to listen to the part of myself that
Mm,
allowed this person to behave in the way that they did with me. I'm not going
mm.
to allow that next time.
So
I don't know
true.
if I'm making sense here. This
No,
is,
you are. Absolutely, you are. And when you say, every time I hear you saying that, we want to be, more lovable or more loving, imagine the question comes to mind like, how do you even know who you want to be if you haven't experienced what it feels like to be that? Right? Or if you haven't experienced that love from someone else flowing towards you, because you felt it in your bones, in your physical body, right? And only then you want to recreate that, or you want to have that experience all over again, maybe with someone else, maybe with your own self, right? Maybe with your children, maybe with your spouse. But because you have tasted that yumminess, right, of that love, now you have the experience, and now you want to replicate and become that all over again. And imagine when we are not teaching that to our next generation or people around us, how can we expect from them, to behave in a loving way, to behave in a more comforting and warm way? So it's such a crucial, and very deep, not only the understanding of it first of all, and then trying our best to create and recreate that environment for each other, so we can feel safe, feel loved, feel the warmth, to pass it on.
I think this is a really important reflection that you're having. And part of it is, yeah, if we don't have it in our environment nurturing, right?
Yeah.
It can cover over the nature of ourselves,
Mm.
but it doesn't have to.
Mm.
Like, um, what you're talking about, being this loving being is loving soul, it's the nature, it's your
Yes.
nature, and it gets covered over with wounds,
It
but
does.
it's actually your nature, whether or not you experienced it. I don't, we have our own nature, right?
Yes.
Ansa is different from Ruchika, is different from whoever's, all the listeners here. They have
Right.
their own nature. But this, for many of us, especially, I can't say the whole world.
Mm.
I don't understand the whole world and the mess in it. But I know the people who are attracted to listening to us
Yes.
today, right? Listening to us talking, there's something that they know. They're listening because they know that they have their nature. And their nature, they want it. And that nature, whether or not it's been nurtured,
Mm.
it's still there. It may be covered over, but it's there. And there are some of these people that we were talking about, these high beings, these people who come on this planet, and they have maybe gone through a lot of adversity in their lives. They didn't get the nurture. They didn't. They got the opposite, and
Yes.
yet the spirit prevailed. Yet they came in. They are this is why we get attracted to them, because no matter what they experience in their lives, they got connected with their own nature. They got connected with the truth of who they are.
Mm.
And that's what they're trying to tell us. They're trying to tell us, hey, you can all be like this. Every
Absolutely.
single one of us can be like that. Maybe not today, but we can all be like that. I don't, I'm not there.
Mm,
I have a long way to go, but but can I nurture the seed in me? Can
mm,
I allow it to sprout? Can I continue to disidentify with my ego and really connect with my nature? Connect, have a nurturing environment is beautiful. And it would be really beautiful to have a group and a community. But is it necessary? No, a lot of the high ones, they didn't have it.
true. Conversation would be that you all have that seed in you. That is your true nature, right? So you don't have to worry about if I have to develop it or cultivate it. All you have to do is just, dust it off. Take all the hurt and the wounded layers away from it, and there you are. You can bloom into your own nature. That seed is lying there, maybe dormant right now, but it is in there. Just go inside, go within, do the work, take the first step, as Ruchika said. Start simple. Whatever you can find your passion in. If you like dancing, start with like simple few steps every single day. Take a walk in the nature. Start journaling. Whatever thoughts come to you, come to your mind. It doesn't have to be like I have to think on a certain pattern or have to think certain thoughts. Just start the process, and the real you will be uncovered, I would say, because that's where some misunderstandings are as well, that people think, oh, I have to become someone. No, you just have to be you and go back and rediscover and reconnect with your real self, not someone else. You don't have to follow and become like somebody else that you see out there, maybe on TV, on shows, or in real life. No, as Ruchika said so beautifully in the beginning, that you want to bloom as yourself, like, as Ansa, as Ruchika, not as third person, whoever inspires you. That can be an inspiration. You want to achieve certain levels, maybe you can use that person as an inspiration, but you don't want to become that person, because that person already exists, right? You want to be you and connect with your nature.
To remember where you want to go and not forget that. To remember that your journey is back to you. And to not forget that is the biggest thing, I feel like, because sometimes, again, I say, being on a spiritual path for over 20 years, it's like, oh, I want to go here. I'm going to become this one, which is beautiful, to want to be a high being, want to be like them. It's beautiful. It's part of the path, I think. But I think remembrance of what we have forgotten, remembrance that we are not our egos, and that we are more, is the biggest, it can be the biggest takeaway, because we forget. Over 20 years on this journey, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I am so identified with my ego at times, and it's like, oh no, it doesn't go away.
Yes. What is your definition of ego?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this is good. Yeah. So our ego is a structure. It is, we need our healthy ego. We need the healthy ego that drives us to places safely, or takes us to the grocery store so we can cook some food. So there's the healthy portion of our ego. But a lot of us, our egos are also a lot more than that. They are actually, we have every time we got wounded and lost connection with who we really are, we formed an ego fake entity that corresponds to the realness of who we are actually. So most of us, we're walking around on this planet, we are emulating the real truth of who we are. But it's actually a dead structure. It doesn't have aliveness to it. It's not where love comes from. It's not where sweetness comes from. It's not where energy comes from, or aliveness, or passion, or joy, or any of that. Peace. None of that comes from my ego, but it is holding the place, as in the work that I do and I'm aware of, is that the ego, different parts of our ego, is holding the space for the real us, and it is holding on to itself out of protection and not wanting to give up what it's actually symbolizing. Is this too complicated? Did I answer your question?
No, actually, the words that you're using, they're helping me form a visual picture of it. That is so beautifully you have explained the ego. And I'm thinking, and I'm going to give you an example right here. I'm sorry, I'm just going around. So let's say I'm thinking, as you were explaining, this is a roll, right? Like a tissue roll. And maybe the real self is in the middle, right? And these are all the layers that I have accumulated over 40 years of the hurt, of the programs, good or bad programs that worked, helped me to get where I am, and the wounds as well. So I have to just, peel off all these layers, right? Step by step. It will take work, of course, and I want to get to that inner part that's real me.
Yeah.
That's how I was seeing it when you were, explaining it for me. What do you think? Is my understanding somewhat close?
Really beautiful. I love how you said it. It's exactly what we describe on the spiritual journey. We're always like unfolding, and we get close, deeper and deeper wounds will come up as we get closer to the core. But I think one of the things, Ansa, in this is a trick that many of us fall into, is like we feel like we have to undo the whole role to get to the core of us. Okay. And that is not my perspective. Okay. I think what we do is we go for the core. We still have all the tissues around it. We go for the core. The tissues will start to unravel. And that's the psychological work. What I said, we have to go through the territories of our wounds. I don't know if we'll ever be wound free. I don't know if we have to process all of our wounds. But I think this is a very big orientation, because sometimes people get lost because they keep unraveling. And they're like, when am I going to get to the truth of who I am? Right. And that's not the path that I took. Like that, when I go to a high being, guess what? I am getting connected with myself in a beautiful way. Then when I come home, I have to I have to clean up a little bit of the wounds that came up. Right. But really the orientation, and that's the whole premises around remembering, right? Remembering the sweetness, remembering the nature, remembering the goodness. We're going to the core. Yes. So we're true. Not unraveling that to get to it.
You're so right, because let's say I start to unravel this day by day, but then at the same time, in that same day, I have accumulated more programs, more wounds, right? Yeah. And if I keep trying to go back and get more, I'm actually on the first layer. I can't really peel off all the layers. So if I try to just understand who I am at the core and go and connect with it and experience and understand, like, all these wounds and all these layers and experiences were there as part of my journey to go through the growth and evolution. This is the process. It is actually helping me to become the next level soul that I will become at the end of this journey.
Yeah. It's both. You're right. It's both. It's like, yes, I want to add less wounds, less programs to myself. I want to connect more with who I am, which is what you talked about. Do your whirling, whatever it is that is your practice. Do your spiritual practices, and because they're there to get you to the core. They're there to get you to the core. They're there to try to connect you with who you actually are. And sometimes you won't be able to reach it because there's a wound in the way. There's a
Right.
there's a tissue that needs to
Yes.
be taken care of. And sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I reached it.
Yeah.
And now I have a whole bunch of tissues that I need to take care of on
Right.
the outside because it brought them to light. It's the dust. It brought them to light.
Yes.
So that I can dip back into who I am again.
Exactly. Let's say someone starts on their journey, like they get inspired from this talk and they're like, okay, yes, this is what exactly I want to do with my life and connect back to my real self. And they start, let's say, the journey, they are taking a walk in the nature, right? That's like the easiest, everybody can do that, right? What is the thought they would think or do that will help them on their path or stay at least on that path for quite some time until the next layer of that path unfolds itself?
Yeah. When we take a walk in nature, a lot of times we're being affected by the energy of nature around us. That's a part of what we open up to. When we allow ourselves to experience that spontaneously, things can arise in a beautiful way, really beautiful way. It's like when we go to a place like nature, we start to open up to something more. We become less identified with our egos.
Right.
Anger, most of us either suppress it, repress it, or we blast off, right? Discharge our anger. What's underneath this is the energy of aliveness. It's the energy of strength and courage. So this is one example of we can start to evoke either this particular quality. So it's multifaceted. The one is nature, one is remembrance, one is I look at different aspects of myself that got covered over and got wounded and I lost connection with. And what we can do is we can evoke the quality or the being who represents this energy to connect to that aspect of my nature. And then I can see, what happened? The wound will arise that made me not have a healthy response with my anger. My healthy response might be, I feel my anger. I feel it in my body. I feel so much heat in my body, like everything is getting hot. And my anger transforms into strength. It transforms into clarity. It transforms into courage to take action. It transforms into, for example, a sense of protectiveness for myself that one person who hurt me, the next person, I can forgive that person, but I'm going to have this protection in me that I'm not going to allow another person to do that to me. You can come to my website, which is ruchikamehta.com, my first and last name.com. I also have a YouTube channel with teachings on it. And that's also at Ruchika Mehta. And then if there are any Middle Eastern and South Asian women who are like wanting this, please reach out to me, email me, or sign up for my email list. And I would love to start a group where we can come together. I would love to hold the field for us to reclaim really ourselves and our beauty.
Yeah, everyone, thank you so much for being with us for this long, all the way throughout this conversation. I hope this will help in your journey of self-discovery, self-connection, and going back to your own soul. If you haven't already subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do subscribe. If you like this episode, give us a thumbs up and press the bell icon so all the future videos and their notifications can reach to you. Thank you so much. Take care, live with passion, and chase your dreams.